Good day everyone to my fellow classmates and to our teacher Mr. Joshua Aaron Pagulayan. My name is Lovern Ferrer from BSED Social Studies. Mrs. Pantoja and I will discuss to you the given topic to us, which is indicator for quality change. So before we proceed to our topic, let me read first the learning objectives of our presentation. So after the discussion, the students should be able to exhibit in-depth understanding about the different dimensions of landscape quality. Number 2, describe and analyze thoroughly the types of landscape quality indicators. Number 3, explain how the given factors affect the change in landscape quality. This will be the content of our presentation. First, landscape quality. A. Dimensions of landscape quality: structural, visual, ecological, and cultural. Letter B. Quality of life. Opportunities to meet human needs and subjective well-being. For number 2, landscape indicators. A. Types of landscape quality indicators: ecological, economic, historical and cultural, perceptual, and land uses. For number 3, factors affecting the changes in landscape. A. Natural environment, and letter B is social environment. And that will be the content of our presentation. So in here, I prepared a quote which is, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new sights, but in looking with new eyes." This is by Marcel Proust. So the quote simply means that in order for us to achieve the goal of our discovery or our adventure, we should not judge and believe the sceneries or landscape that our bare eyes can see. On the contrary, we should see its physical characteristic, history, in order for us to determine its physicality and hidden history. And I hope that these quotes will serve you as a gist in our entire presentation. So before we proceed to our topic, which is indicator for quality change, let us first define what is landscape. So landscape is sometimes we use to the synonyms of the word place and environment. But our teacher, Mr. Pagulayan, defined and give us the appropriate meaning of it, which is it refers to the cultural meaningfulness of place and to how cultural perception affect how people engage with things and with each other. In a simple words, it is quite different from the place because it obtains quality which are cultural, perceptual, and many other. So we are all know that landscape is the topic that we discussed last week. So let us now move on to the landscape quality. So let me read to you the first definition of landscape quality. So landscape quality can encompass many elements, including environmental pollution and cleanliness, visual and aesthetic quality, and perception of personal security. So, according to the first definition, landscape quality can encompass by many elements which is part and generate a certain landscape to be considered its quality. So, the second definition is landscape quality encompasses diverse characteristics of the natural and cultural environment. So according to the second definition of landscape quality, same as the first definition, it has its own characteristic in order for them to be identified. For example, the Malbog Hot Spring here in Buena Vista, kilala ito as a therapeutic place because of its historical history. So maraming nagsasabi na ito daw is nakakagaling, which is healing of diseases. So because of the cultural history of Malbog Sulfuric Hot Spring, it affects the physical and the historical aspect and quality of a certain landscape. So after we discuss the landscape quality, let us now proceed to the 4 dimensions of landscape quality. So there are 4 dimensions of landscape quality, which is structural, ecological, cultural, and visual. So let us now define what is structural. So structural is a landscape structure expresses the spatial pattern of landscape elements and the connections between the different ecosystem or landscape elements. So in a simple word, structural is belong in a dimension of landscape quality due to the spatial patterns that we can see and observe in a landscape. It is also vital in order for us to assess landscape function and landscape change, and through that, connectivity and fragmentation are known. So let us now proceed to the second dimension of landscape quality, which is ecological. So according to our research, ecological is the study of spatial patterns and ecological processes. Landscape try to understand the causes and consequences of spatial heterogeneity whose spatial across scale. So in short words or in simple words, ecological is in determining the quality of landscape. We just don't need to study the patterns of how it is being connected or committed. But we should know also the ecological processes. When we say ecological, it is the study that deals with relationship between group of living things and their environment, such like ecosystem functionality and diversity. And ecological also is discuss the quality of being heterogenic in order to determine easily the quality of a certain landscape. So let us now proceed to the third dimension of landscape quality. So the third dimension of landscape quality is cultural. So let me read first to you what is the definition of cultural. Cultural is the human's act upon the environment, and that the combination of human culture with the physical environment creates the cultural landscape. So in simple words or in other words, cultural landscape is when we see cultural, from the word itself, culture. So our culture affect the environment of a certain landscape. So it is a part of dimension of landscape quality and the factor to determine the quality of a landscape. For example, here in Marinduque, our festival here in Marinduque is the Mariones Festival. So that it is our tradition as a Marinducanon. So the way we celebrate, it affect the physical environment of our place, which is Marinduque. It also serves as our landmark, which demonstrates the festival of Marinduque. Due to it creates cultural landscape. So let us now proceed to the visual dimension of landscape quality. So visual dimension of landscape quality, it is focused on evaluating the visual characteristic, locational installation, and social life of a place or a route on a perceptual basis, including all sense organs, especially the eyes, within a functional relationship. So in other words, visual dimension of landscape quality is it is from visual from the eyes on our sides. Ito yung mga karaniwang madalas natin makikita sa isang landscape. So, the dimension quality is the visuals that can let seen in our landscape. And through visuals, it also shapes people's daily life, physical planning, and design works. For me, it is the easiest quality of a landscape that we can determine with a common individual, because it is just uses by our bare eyes, while there are also professionals who can determine the visual of a certain landscape, who are the architect, engineers, and many others. So all of that are the four dimensions of landscape quality. So I have here the figure that will determine and can show to you how the four dimensions of landscape quality being related and influences with each other. and that is based on the application of remote sensing data. So what is remote sensing data? So according to our research, remote sensing data is a science of obtaining information broad an object or areas from a distance. This kind of sensors can be used in satellites or unmounted on aircraft. Ito yung halimbawa ginagamit ng mga scientists in order to determine the physical characteristic of the Earth. And from the fourth dimension of landscape quality are structural, ecological, cultural, and visual. We can determine easily what kind of landscape they are. Halimbawa, pumunta tayo sa Tagaytay. If we have a knowledge on the quality of landscape, which are the four that I have discussed earlier, we can easily determine what kind of quality landscape they are. They are nga. We may easily discover also the indication for quality change, and that will be tackled by my partner later. So, but now let us just move on and let's go to the quality of life. When we heard the quality of life, what is your background study about quality of life? So let us know what is quality of life. So what is quality of life? So ano nga ba ang quality of life? So quality of life, or QOL, is proposed as a multi-scale or multi-dimensional concept that contains interacting objective and subjective elements. So according to its definition, quality of life or QOL offer us multi-scale. When we say multi-scale, what is your knowledge about it? So it is occurring over different levels. It is also the dimension of how people fulfilled their objective human needs in order to build their subjective well-being. So the second definition of quality of life is, it is the extent to which objective human needs are fulfilled in relation to personal or group perceptions of subjective well-being. So while quality of life long been an explicit or implicit policy goal, objective, definition, and measurement have been elusive. So when we say elusive, ibig sabihin mailap. Kapag nagde-determine tayo ng quality ng life ng isang tao, madalas sinasabi natin yung, ay mayaman yan, may quality yung life niyan. So hindi, dyan tayo nagkakamali. It is a policy goal for individuals, communities, nation, and the world. So as you can see from the figure number 2 here, which is the integrative model of quality of life, so this figure exemplificates that the three separate on things to achieve the quality life. So meron tayong tatlong bagay na kailangang i-consider para masabi natin na may quality yung kanyang buhay or life, or her life is a quality. So number 1 is opportunities to meet human needs. Pangalawa is human needs. Pangatlo is subjective well-being. First is the opportunities to meet human needs. Human needs and subjective well-being. Human needs are basic needs for subsistence, reproduction, security, and affection. Ito yung mga basic na pangangailangan natin na kailangang ma-provide upang masabi kang may quality yung iyong life. So, subjective well-being or assessed by individuals or group responses, the relation between specific human needs or perceived identification with each of them can be affected by mental capacity, cultural context, information, education, empowerment or improvement, and the like, often context information ways. Moreover, the relation between the fulfillment of human needs and the overall subjective well-being is affected by the culture to give a fulfilling each of the human needs relative to each other.
The second part of our topic is about the landscape indicators. First and foremost, what is landscape indicators? These are defined as indexes that allowed to determine landscape character and its social perception based on numerical values, allowing a large number of data to be reduced to a simple objective measure. What is the meaning of that? Landscape indicators explain how does the landscape change over time as well as over longer periods. Also, describe as quantified information and the most effective tool to analyze landscape quality. It is considered as the very important tools because they identify resources, qualities, and criticalities of a particular area. Apparently, we had identified five types of landscape quality indicators. First is the ecological. It is an indicator that gives us data about an ecosystem, such as its biodiversity. We use ecological indicator to gain information about ecosystems and our impact on those ecosystems. Meaning, in an ecosystem, we can identify the habitat response and exposure that has an impact in the landscape. For example, the different kind of fishes living in the seas. As their population increases, they need to find out the safest habitat for themselves in any part of the sea. In this case, their exposure and response in that habitat changes the landscape. Second is the economic. The function of this indicator is to examine and assess the economic aspects of landscape with an interpretation on the basis of two major approaches to analysis: the economic value of landscape and the economic strength of landscape. In consideration of these assumptions, interpreting the economic value and economic strength of landscape is very crucial. Why? Firstly, landscape is an externality as the economic activities involve the use and the transformation of it have different effects. Another is landscape, especially in modern society, can be seen as more and more of a limited source, and therefore many aspects of economic are associated with landscape. Third, we have the historical and cultural. This allows to locate concentrations of archaeological and architectural heritage that contributes to improve this aesthetics quality. And historical and cultural value of the landscape provides a direct measure of resources devoted to the culture protection and promotion of cultural heritage. Based on the informations that we can gather from the early people, usually our ancestors, we can easily find out the historical and cultural value of landscape by the means of how they protect and continue to treasure the cultural heritage of that landscape. Fourth is we have the perceptual. These were developed to track progress as seen through the eyes of affected populations, wherein it could determine how the landscape changes rapidly. It is very difficult and involves many crucial or critical assumptions, wherein establishing the public significance of various landscape values is very needed. Some of these are historicity, naturalness, beauty, recreational, usability, and so forth. It is said that perceptual indicator is critical. Why is that? Because it is not that very easy to just give and emphasize our perception towards that landscape. Criticize and you need to criticize and observe it carefully through the use of our eyes, and usually having different visual and social perception can determine the changes in landscape. Lastly, we have the land use. The function is to evaluate the territorial conditions of territorial use and processes and the related landscape transformations. This is very useful for monitoring territorial and landscape conditions, estimating the impact of policies and territorial actions on the landscape, and guiding the actions of territorial and landscape planning. Under this indicator, this can be analyzed: the land use capacity, landscape quality to support transformations, degraded landscapes and landscapes under pressure, protected natural areas, and rural areas. So those are the types of landscape quality indicators. Now, let's move on to the factors affecting the changes in landscape. Landscape are changing rapidly and continuously, particularly in the highly urbanized areas. What we grew up with and remember for childhood is often changed beyond recognition when we return decades due to developments, changes in land use, removal of features, and other changes in landscape. Consequently, not only the natural environment, but also the social environment strongly influence the changes in landscape. So we have the natural environment. This refers to the non-human made surroundings and conditions in which all living and non-living things exist and occurred naturally. Land, air, water, plants, and animals are all compromised to the natural landscape. It comprises all the various structures or sources of water and different types of water bodies like rivers, lakes, seas, oceans, etc. For the simplest meaning, everything that is not human-made comes under the natural environment. Landscape can change through natural, geological, or historical or biological processes such as the earthquake, volcanic eruption, and landslides. Those are some of the topographic factors that really affect the changes in landscape. It is not human-made. It is natural. On the other hand, is the social environment. It is collectively the environment of all the things that humans have overlaid on top of the world. Our personal and societal relationships, our institutions, our cultures, and our physical surroundings, all of the aspects and products of human activity and interaction. Some of the human activities that affects the changes in landscape are weathering and erosions, cutting the trees, floods, and fires. The growth of technology has increased our ability to change a natural landscape. An example of human impact on landscape can be seen along the coastline of the Netherlands. Water from the North Sea was pumped out of certain areas, uncovering the fertile crescent or the fertile soil below. Dikes and dams were built to keep water from these areas and now used for farming and other purposes. Another, many human activities increase the rate at which natural processes such as weathering and erosion, as what I have said earlier, shapes and changes the landscape. The cutting of trees in the forest exposes more soil to wind and water erosion. Prior to this, we humans have been changing landscapes to obtain food and other essential elements for thousands of years. Examples of this are we clear forests and change the shape of the land to graze animals and grow crops. We move mountains and divert rivers to build cities and towns. We even create new land from the sea in coastal areas. Okay, those are the factors that affect the changes in landscape. The natural environment, which is the topographic factors, and the social environment, which is the intensity of human activities. And that is the second and last part of our topic.
So that's all for today and I hope you understand our presentation and sana may natutunan kayo. Yun lang po at maraming salamat. So here are the summary of our presentation. Landscape quality can be classified through natural and environment, which are the sceneries that we can see in every day, and also to its cultural environment, which are the history behind it and traditional event being happened with regard to the concept of landscape. There are also four dimensions of landscape quality in order to easily identify and recognize what kind of landscape quality of a certain or specific landscape, which are the structural that refers with how a landscape change and its connectivity into other. The second one is ecological, which is dimension of ecosystem such as living organism and consists of heterogeneity. Third is cultural, which refers to how certain landscape and its citizens' culture influences each other. And lastly is visual, which refers to the physical and environmental aspect of landscape which can be seen and recognized through our bare eyes. And the quality of life is the extent to which objective human needs are fulfilled in relation to personal or group perceptions of subjective well-being. In order to be recognized as a qualified or having a quality life, there are three things to be considered and process of how people commit quality life, which are opportunities to meet human needs and subjective well-being. Landscape indicators are the quantified information and the most effective tool to analyze the landscape quality. There are different types of landscape quality indicators: ecological, economic, historical, and cultural, perceptual, and land use. They have their own unique way to widely use in assessing the quality of landscape. Landscapes are changing rapidly and continuously, thus, natural and social environment strongly influence the changes of it. Natural environment refers to the non-human made surroundings and conditions in which all living and non-living things occurred naturally. Landscape can change through biological processes such as earthquake, volcanic eruption, and landslide. And for the social environment, it refers to all of the things that humans have overlaid on the top of the world, all of the aspects and products of human activity and interaction. Some of these that affects the changes of landscapes are weathering and erosion, cutting of trees, floods, and fires. And the general insights of our lesson is landscape indicators could probably explain how thus the landscape is changing over longer periods. They can also identify the resources, qualities, and criticalities of a particular area. Ecological, economic, historical, and cultural, perceptual, and the land use indicator serves as a big help for everyone to kindly determine the landscape character. It is very difficult and involves many critical assumptions wherein we need to criticize and observe carefully what is certainly important to do. Upon with the factors affecting the changes in landscape, both natural and social environment were considered as to be prior to this social environment, which is the intensity of human activities had more impact that can be seen until now and continuously happening. We definitely changing the landscape beyond some reasons and purposes.